So I know a lot of you are quite interested about the fact that I live in Hong Kong. So for the intro for today's video, I'm going to take you on a little tour of the neighborhood. Let's get into it. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to be looking at how I use an old beaten up iPhone 7 to vastly speed up my DAW workflow. I can see that this track has 60 channels, including the buses, but let's say I just want to focus in on the drums. I can get my phone and go like this. Boom, just the drums. And I'll be showing you how I put that into practice when I made this track here. And I'm also going to be answering this question from YC Studio, aka the Snake Oil guy.
You might ask, like, why do you need a preamp on something that is already preamped? Because everything that is recorded is on line level. I don't know.
So let's just get into it. Right, so we're going to have a look at this track that I've been working on at the same time as giving you a sneak preview of this app on the phone. So if I press this one icon here, you can see that it's switched screens, so you can now see Cubase. If I press this next icon, what it's going to do is press play on Cubase at the same time as muting my mic so that you don't hear the sound of my speakers come through my mic, which is pretty smart for a one button press. If I press that icon there, what that's going to do is reduce the volume of Cubase by 15 dB at the same time as unmuting my mic. If I press it again, it will do the reverse. And like I said on the intro, I've got 60 channels on this track here. So let's say the whole arrangement is getting a little bit overwhelming and I just want to focus in on the drums. I can press this one icon here and you can see that all I can see now is the drums, which are contained within this folder. I want to see the whole project again. Let's press it again and mute my mic and bring the volume back up. And if I press that button, it's going to stop Cubase and again unmute my mic. So as you can see, this app is insanely powerful. But before I get into what it is and what it's about, let's first talk about this track, which is my new single called One of Us, which should be out on all streaming platforms and online stores by the time you watch this video, hopefully, if I can get around the few issues I'm having with the distributor. But yeah, Synthwave. Let's talk about Synthwave. So when we're talking about Synthwave, the most important aspect really is the feeling of nostalgia. It's that feeling you get when you watched all 80s movies with synth-heavy soundtracks. So things like Blade Runner, things like Terminator, TV shows like Knight Rider, that kind of thing. And a lot of the time when we watch those, we're watching them, or we used to watch them through old VHS players, listen through old TV speakers. So a lot of people, when they're processing Synthwave, they try and emulate the sound of old VHS players and old TV speakers and old recording methods. So last month I ran a competition on the channel where I gave away some plugins, and as part of the competition prize, I also said that I would do a tutorial based on whatever the competition winner asked for, and the winner asked for a Synthwave tutorial. Now I've been having a lot of fun making this genre, and it's because it's just so open-ended. Now when I've been doing my research and listening to all these Synthwave tracks, The one thing that I really honed in on is the fact that there doesn't seem to be any restriction as to the kind of BPM you want to be at or the kind of rhythm you want to be concentrated on. It's really all about the instruments that you use. So I think the most important thing that makes synthwave is the use of classic drum machines, or in my case, samples from classic drum machines. So it seems to me the most popular kind of drum machines used in synthwave are the Lindrum and the DMX. So again, with my app, I'm going to hone in on the drums, and let's open up Groove Agent. And what I've actually done on this track is combine the DMX and the Lindrums. So I've got a kick from the DMX, snare from the DMX, and I've also got a snare from the Lindrum. And once you've got your drum sounds, there's really two things that give it that real 80s nostalgia feel. The first one is the gated reverb on the snare. So where the drum soloed, let's have a listen to that reverb on the snare. And let me solo those snares. So snare 1 is my DMX snare. Snare 2, which I've just got playing every other snare hit, is my Lindrum snare. Just giving us a nice little bit of subtle variation. So what I've done is routed both of these snares to a single bus, and then I'm sending some of that snare bus to an auxiliary channel on which I have the Reverb Plate 140 by Arturia. Sounds like this. And then I'm sending the reverb through Cubase's gate, and I have the gate set up with a sidechain input. The sidechain input is coming from snare 1, so every time that snare hits, it's going to open the gate, and I have the gate set to hold by this amount here, which was just the amount that sounded good. So after 371 milliseconds of the gate being open and letting the reverb through, it will just close, and then we get this effect. And then after that, I just put it through an EQ. So I'm being quite aggressive with this EQ, and I've put a cut at 288 hertz, and I put a high cut at 7 kilohertz, and that sounds like this. Bring all of the drums in. And then I'm sending all of my drums, including the reverbs, into a drum bus. And to really exaggerate that gated reverb, I'm using the SSL drum strip, and it's all about this listen mic compressor button here. Okay, so you can see that I've got my dry wet at 26%, so I'll put it all the way to wet so you can really hear what this listen mic compressor is doing. And if you do fancy a little bit of a history lesson, go on to Google, type in Phil Collins SSL listen mic compressor drum sound, and there'll be a whole array of articles and videos describing how Phil Collins, I guess, invented this sound. And talking of Phil Collins, the second thing that makes these drums sound so nostalgic are the tom fills. So right here, let me open it up and play it, and you will hear straight away what I'm talking about. And if I just open up Groove Agent, toms sound like this. This is just all the same sample, and you can see I've just pitched them at different places and added a whole lot of reverb. So once you've got your classic drum samples and you're processing them in an 80s style, next thing you want to do is get yourself some classic synths, or in my case, classic synth emulations. So for the bass, first of all, I have the Nifonium, not sure how to pronounce that. Just playing a real simple one-note arpeggiated sound. Sounds like this. And I'm layering that with this sound here, which is coming from Trillion, and it is a detuned ARP Odyssey. So layered with the Nifonium, sounds like this. And then I have that layered with a sub bass, just to give it a bit more of a modern feel. This is just an 808 style sub, just to bring in some of that real low end. Sounds like this. For the harmony parts, firstly you have this kind of electric piano synth type sound. And I have that layered with the Matrix 12V from Arturia. Sounds like this. So you can hear we're starting to sound real 80s, real retro, real soundtrack-esque. I have those layered with the Jupiter 8V. Sounds like this. And of course, an 80s soundtrack would not be complete without an arpeggiator and a CS80. So I have my CS80 playing an arpeggiator. And play the harmony with the bass part and the drums. So for the melody, I wanted something that sounded like an electric guitar. So I started off with this, which is this preset Stratocassynth from Pigments by Arturia. Sounds like this. And I layered that with another preset from Pigments, this one called Drifty Component. Sounds like this. And then layered that with an actual guitar sample from Omnisphere, this Dan's Studio Dirty Baritone. So all three together sound like this. And if I put everything together, sounds like this. And with all the layering that I've got going on, you can now quite easily see how this app that I've got on my phone has sped up my workflow exponentially in the creation of this track. And the app that I'm using is called Stream Deck to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on my phone. I'll bring up my iPhone screen on the computer. Now this app is, I believe, available for iOS and for Android. It costs maybe $2 a month, so it is a subscription, which is a little bit of a pain. I would rather just buy it outright, but it is what it is. And what this app allows you to do is basically set up these icons, which can be linked to any commands, hotkeys, macro commands, anything at all on your computer, and the app on the phone connects to the app on your computer via your home wireless network. So you can configure this in any way you want. Now you don't just have to have it controlling your DAW, you can have it controlling basically anything on your computer, and you can basically customize it to whatever your workflow is. So let's have a look at how I've got mine set up. So let's click on the show drums, seeing as I've shown you show drums once or twice already. If I click on it, it brings up the options below. So in this section, we can choose whatever icon we want. So you can see, because I have this one set as a switch, I have this folder icon on one switch, and when I hit it again, it switches to this icon. You can type in whatever label you want in the title. Under this section where it says hotkey 1, if I press it once, it's going to hit Control, Alt, Shift, and D on my computer. And if I hit it again, it's going to press the same thing again. And if I go into Cubase and go into my project logical editor, you can see I've set up some logical commands like this show drum folder. And if I hit apply, you can see that it just shows everything that is within my drum folder. I've also got logical presets for show bass, show harmony, show melody. And if I go into my key commands and go to Process Project Logical Editor, you can see that I've assigned key commands to the presets that I made in the logical editor. But this is all totally dependent on my own personal workflow. You can create key commands for anything you want in here, and the key command can be anything you want it to be as well. You just type in whatever you would like, such as Control plus slash assign, and then you go back to Stream Deck and you can type in that key command in there and label it as you want. So just to give you an example of some other things I've got set up, if I press this button on my phone, it's going to zoom in between my locators like this. And you can see the shortcut I've got set up there is Control, Alt, Shift, and L. If I want to zoom out to the full project, I can hit this button on my phone here. I also have this preset button. If I want to bring up a track preset, I can just click that. And you can see it brings up my choose track preset box. So the way I went about setting it up for my own personal workflow was anything that takes more than 2 or 3 mouse clicks that I do all of the time, I basically set up key commands for them and then put them into the Stream Deck app. And as you can guess, it sped up my workflow immensely. So once you've got your classic drum sounds and your classic synth sounds, then it's all about processing those sounds in a way that feels nostalgic.
Now, what we have in here as standard is an 80s preamp. You might ask, like, why do you need a preamp on something that is already preamped? Because everything that is recorded is on line level. I don't know.
So I really want to talk about the difference between a mix engineer and a producer, and the way that we approach and consume plugins in a different way and with a different mindset. So if I want to create an analogy, I would say the difference between a producer and a mix engineer is pretty much the same as in film when you're talking about a film director and a film editor. So a film director will create his entire vision, and a film editor will then get that vision and chop it down into a form that is manageable for the average viewer to sit through. And it's the same same thing when it comes to a music producer and a mix engineer. A music producer will create his entire or her entire audio vision, and a mix engineer will then turn that vision into something that is palatable for the average listener. So the difference in mentality when it comes to approaching music can be applied to the way we consume plugins. So a mix engineer will look at a plugin and try and work out how they can use that plugin to make a sound as crisp and pristine as possible, whereas a producer will look at a plugin and think how they can use that plugin to manipulate a sound to create that feeling that they feel inside their bodies and inside their head. So to answer that question from a man at White Sea Studio, and this is in no way any kind of diss whatsoever, because I absolutely love his content. Guy cracks me up. He's really, really funny. If you've not checked him out, go check him out. I'll put a link in the description. But he's asking, why would you use a virtual preamp when everything's already recorded at line level? And I'm sure you've already guessed where this is going, because I'm using all virtual instruments here, so nothing has been recorded at line level. And of course, I'm going for that retro feel. So a good way to process virtual sounds is through a virtual preamp to make it sound virtually dirty. So let's have a listen to a few examples of that. So on the kick, I'm using the pre-treater or pre-tried A, which I guess is an emulation of a Trident A, and this is from Arturia. So if I bypass the plugin like this and unbypass it, you would hear that it makes a massive difference on this kick. So yeah, it's like having a completely different kick drum. So I've also got all my harmony elements all sent to the same harmony bus here. So again, I have the pre-treater, tried A, however you want to pronounce it, on the whole harmony bus. Let's have a listen to that. And with this one, I've actually got it split into mid-side mode. So I'm doing different processing on the sides to what I'm doing on the mids. So it's not only adding a little bit of character, but it's also adding a little bit of width as well. So let's have a listen again. And just for the sake of doing things in threes, I've got the pre-V76 on my guitar synth group. So let's have a listen to it bypassed and unbypassed. And yeah, that one's like night and day. And again, doing mid-side processing, so adding more distortion on the sides than I am in the mids. And yeah, that is why we use software emulations of preamps. At least that's why I do anyway. Okay, let me know in the comments if you're into these little bloggy inserts or if you're just not asked at all. Anyway, that's it for now. I've been Craig Lopez. This has been Tutorialism. Now go make some music. Peace.